Hey parents, if you have more than one child, you've probably asked yourself this question countless times. Why do my kids fight so much? One moment they're playing together beautifully, and the next moment they're screaming at each other over who gets to sit in a particular chair or who touched whose toy. You've probably tried everything, separating them, making them apologize, taking away privileges, even bribing them to get along, but the fighting just keeps happening. Wow. Winnicott spent years studying sibling relationships, and what he discovered might completely change how you understand and respond to these daily battles. He found that sibling fights aren't really about the toys, the seats, or even the perceived unfairness that children are always complaining about. They're about something much deeper and more fundamental. They're about your children's deepest fears and needs related to love, security, and their place in the family. Here's what Winnicott understood that most of us miss. When your children fight with each other, they're not actually fighting about the immediate issue at hand. They're fighting about existential questions that every child grapples with. Am I loved enough? Am I safe in this family? Will there always be enough love and attention for me? Do my parents love my sibling more than me? These are terrifying questions for a child's developing mind to wrestle with, and they can't articulate them directly. Instead, these deep fears and insecurities get played out through seemingly trivial conflicts about who gets the bigger piece of cake or who gets to choose the television. Showdown. Let me give you an example that might sound familiar. Your 6-year-old and 4-year-old are playing quietly in the living room when suddenly you hear screaming. You rush in to find them in a fierce battle over a toy that neither of them has shown any interest in for months. From an adult perspective, this fight seems completely irrational and unnecessary. But from Winnicott's perspective, something much more significant is happening. Maybe the 6-year-old noticed that you spent a little extra time helping the 4-year-old with something earlier, and that triggered their unconscious fear that you might love their sibling more. The fight over the toy becomes a way of testing whether you'll take their side, whether you'll defend their rights, whether they're still important to you. Meanwhile, the 4-year-old might be fighting just as fiercely because they're working through their own developmental challenges about autonomy and control. At their age, they're learning that they're a separate person with their own rights and preferences, and standing up to their older sibling becomes practice for asserting themselves in the world. Neither child is consciously thinking about these deeper issues, but they're both driven by powerful emotional needs that get expressed through the conflict over the toy. This is why traditional approaches to sibling fighting often don't work very well. When we focus only on the surface level, making them share the toy, punishing them for fighting, or trying to determine who's right and who's wrong, we're missing the real emotional work that's happening underneath. Winnicott believed that sibling rivalry is actually a normal and necessary part of child development. Through their relationships with brothers and sisters, children learn crucial skills about negotiation, conflict resolution, empathy, and standing up for themselves. They also work through deep questions about identity, competition, and their place in social groups. But here's the key insight from Winnicott's work. The way parents respond to sibling conflicts can either help children work through these developmental challenges in healthy ways, or it can intensify the underlying insecurities that drive the fighting. When we respond to sibling fights with frustration, punishment, or attempts to immediately stop the conflict, we often miss opportunities to address the real needs underneath. But when we can see past the surface behavior and respond to the deeper emotional work that's happening, we can actually help our children develop stronger relationships with each other and with us. Let me share a story that really illustrates this beautifully. There was a family with 2 daughters, ages 7 and 9, who fought constantly. The parents were exhausted by the daily battles and couldn't understand why their girls, who they loved equally, seemed to hate each other so. Much as Winnicott worked with this family, he discovered something important. The 9-year-old had been an only child for 2 years before her sister was born, and she had some very deep, unconscious fears about being displaced by this younger sibling, even though she was now 7 years older and clearly had her own special place in the family. Those early fears were still driving a lot of her behavior. Meanwhile, the 7-year-old was struggling with being the younger sibling who always felt like she was trying to catch up, trying to do everything her big sister could do, and often feeling frustrated by her own limitations. Instead of focusing on stopping the fights, Winnicott helped the parents understand what each daughter really needed. The older daughter needed extra reassurance about her special place as the firstborn, her unique qualities and contributions to the family, and her parents' confidence in her maturity and capabilities. The younger daughter needed support for her own individual interests and strengths, help with managing the frustration of being smaller and less capable than her sister, an acknowledgement of how hard it could be to always feel like she was in someone else's shadow. As the parents started addressing these deeper needs, having special one-on-one time with each daughter, celebrating their individual qualities, and helping them understand their unique roles in the family, something amazing happened. The fighting didn't stop completely, but it became much less frequent and much less intense. More importantly, when conflicts did arise, the girls were better able to work through them because their underlying emotional needs were being met. They felt more secure in their parents' love and in their own place in the family, so they didn't need to fight as desperately to prove their worth or defend their territory. This brings up something crucial that Winnicott taught about sibling relationships. He believed that children are always watching their parents for signs of favoritism, always comparing how they're treated to how their siblings are treated, always trying to figure out where they stand in the family hierarchy. This hypervigilance about fairness isn't just about being spoiled or entitled, it's about survival. From a child's perspective, being loved less or valued less than a sibling could mean being abandoned or rejected, which feels life-threatening to their developing psyche. This is why children can become so upset about things that seem trivial. To adults, who gets the bigger slice of pizza, who gets to ride in the front seat, who gets more attention when they're hurt. These seemingly small inequalities feel huge to children because they're interpreting them as evidence about their relative worth and security in the family. Understanding this can help us respond more effectively when our children complain about unfairness. Instead of dismissing their concerns or trying to convince them that everything is equal, we can acknowledge their feelings and help them understand that different doesn't necessarily mean less loved. You might say something like, "I can see you're worried that I love your brother more because I spent more time helping him with his homework. That must feel scary. Let me tell you about some of the special things I love about you and some of the ways I enjoy spending time with you." Winnicott also discovered something important about birth order and how it affects sibling dynamics. Each position in the family, oldest, middle, youngest, only comes with its own unique challenges and advantages, and children often fight about things related to their birth order struggles. Oldest children might fight to maintain their status and privileges, feeling threatened when younger siblings start to catch up to their abilities. They might become bossy or controlling with their siblings, trying to maintain the hierarchical advantage they've always had. Youngest children might fight to prove they're just as capable as their older siblings, becoming defiant or competitive in ways that provoke conflict. They might refuse help or insist on doing things they're not quite ready for, leading to frustration and meltdown. Middle children might fight for attention and recognition, feeling squeezed between the specialness of being the oldest and the cuteness of being the youngest. They might create drama or conflict as a way of ensuring they don't get overlooked. When we understand the birth order dynamics that might be influencing our children's behavior, we can respond more strategically. Instead of treating all sibling conflicts the same way, we can tailor our responses to address the specific challenges each child is facing based on their position in the family. Now, let me talk about one of the most important insights from Winnicott's work on sibling rivalry. He found that children often fight more intensely with siblings who are close to them in age or ability, because the threat of being replaced or overshadowed feels more real. When there's a big age gap between siblings, each child usually has their own clear territory and role in the family. But when children are close in age, they're often competing for the same developmental territory, the same types of attention and recognition, and the same family resources. This is why parents often notice that their children fight more during certain developmental periods, when the younger child starts walking and becomes more mobile, when they start talking and can suddenly compete for conversational attention, when they start school and begin to excel in areas that were previously the older child's domain. Understanding these developmental triggers can help us anticipate and prepare for periods when sibling rivalry might intensify. We can make extra efforts to give each child individual attention, to celebrate their unique qualities, and to help them navigate the challenges of sharing space with someone who's encroaching on their territory. Winnicott also taught us something crucial about the role parents play in either escalating or de-escalating sibling conflicts. He found that when parents get pulled into sibling fights, taking sides, trying to determine who's right and wrong, or getting emotionally reactive to the conflict, they often make the underlying problems worse. When we take sides in sibling fights, we inadvertently confirm one child's fear that we love their sibling more. Even if we're defending the child who seems to be the victim, we're sending a message to the other child that reinforces their insecurity about their place in our affections. When we try to determine who started the fight or who's more to blame, we're missing the point that the conflict is usually about deeper needs that both children have. Focusing on fault and punishment often intensifies the competition between siblings, rather than helping them work through their underlying issues. And when we get emotionally reactive to sibling fighting, yelling at them to stop, threatening consequences, or becoming visibly frustrated, we're adding our own stress to an already charged situation, making it even harder for the children to regulate their emotions and find solutions. So what does Winnicott suggest we do instead? He believed that the most helpful thing parents can do during sibling conflicts is to stay calm and curious, to look for the needs underneath the behavior, and to help children develop skills for working through conflicts themselves. This might mean acknowledging both children's feelings without taking sides. I can see you're both really upset about this toy. You both want to play with it, and that's hard when there's only one. It might mean helping children identify their underlying needs. It sounds like you're worried that your sister always gets to go first. You want to make sure you get fair turns too. Or it might mean teaching problem-solving skills. This is a problem that affects both of you. What are some solutions you can think of that would work for everyone? The goal isn't to eliminate sibling conflict entirely. That would be impossible and actually wouldn't serve your children well. Conflict is how children learn to navigate relationships, stand up for themselves, and work through differences with people they care about. The goal is to help your children develop the skills they need to handle conflicts in healthy ways, and to ensure that their underlying emotional needs for love, security, and recognition are being met, so that they don't need to fight as desperately for these things. Here's something else that's really important to understand about sibling relationships. Winnicott found that children who fight a lot with their siblings aren't necessarily destined to have poor relationships as adults. In fact, siblings who learn to work through conflicts constructively often develop very strong bonds that last throughout their lives. The key is helping them see each other as allies rather than enemies, even when they're in conflict. This happens when children feel secure in their parents' love, when they understand their unique value in the family, and when they develop skills for resolving differences without damaging relationships. One practical way to support this is to look for opportunities to help your children appreciate each other's positive qualities, especially during calm moments when they're not in conflict. You might say things like, "I noticed how gently your brother helped you when you were hurt earlier," or "Your sister was really thoughtful when she saved you some of her special snack." You can also create opportunities for your children to work together toward common goals, planning a surprise for a grandparent, working on a family project, or solving a problem that affects the whole household. When children experience themselves as teammates rather than competitors, they start to see their sibling relationships differently. Remember, sibling rivalry is really about your children's deep need to know that they're loved, valued, and secure in your family. When we can respond to sibling conflicts with this understanding, when we can address the underlying needs rather than just the surface behaviors, we help our children develop not only better relationships with each other, but also the emotional intelligence and relationship skills they'll need throughout their lives. The fighting might not stop completely, but it can become an opportunity for growth, learning, and ultimately deeper connection between the siblings who will hopefully be each other's lifelong companions and supporters.